Hey, ¿qué pasa, Calexico? Welcome back to the podcast. Like always, before we begin, I want to thank a couple of people. First of all, I want to thank the Yepes family for allowing me to record today's episode here at Calexico Brewing Company. I also want to thank my anchor sponsors. Thank you guys for sponsoring the podcast. Jake, Camilo, Edward Velasquez, Eddie Lopez from Roots Creative, Sergio from Sergio's Tacos and Hotdogs. If you're looking for a taquero with Mexicali-style tacos and hot dogs, make sure you contact Sergio. Also want to thank Norma and Galindo for sponsoring the podcast. And finally, David Gastelum. If you're thinking of buying or selling a home, make sure you contact David. His phone number is 760-235-9576. If it's not, I'll edit it in post. I forgot to get ready for the sponsors, but thank you guys for sponsoring the podcast. And thank you, Yepes family, for giving me the space to record today. My guest today is a fellow podcaster. She's recently started her podcast. She's a Calexican as well. My guest today is the talented, funny, and
beautiful. The talented, the funny, the beautiful Marielle Vizcarra.
Yeah. For those of you who listen to that Show Effed Me Up, that's the intro Marielle starts her
Correct.
So before we get into the podcast, tell us a little bit about yourself. You know, and we're talking about before we started recording, you're from Calexico, and tell us.
Yes, of course. CHS alumni 2014. I don't know if this matters or anything, but just played a lot of sports in high school and started really young. I started at the rec department here with Jamie Shu, Coach Shu.
You know what? I knew your name sounded familiar, and I think it was because of sports.
Yeah.
You played softball, right?
I played softball for a little bit. Yeah, but that was when I was way younger. But I, played basketball clinics at Dianza, stuff like that. And then when I got to high school, I did like tennis and track. Once I graduated from Calexico High School, I went straight to UCSD, majored in communication, theater minor, graduated in 2018. From there, had like a 2-month break, and then I started right to work. But just been in the workforce ever since, but I am a creative person. I write. I've been writing poetry since, a long time, probably since I was like a 6th grader when I didn't even know it was poetry. I got introduced to poetry my freshman year at Dianza with Mr. Taylor. Oh, wow. Shout out to Mr. Taylor. And from there, I started playwriting. Took some courses in college, and now hopping onto this podcast thing. And I'm so happy to be here and, be a guest of Que Pasa Calexico.
No, thank you for coming in, especially since, your podcast is based, season 1 was based on horror, and I don't know if it's going to continue, to be like horror-based shows, movies. But I thought it was a cool idea to bring you in and talk about, your show, because it's October, tomorrow's Halloween.
Yes.
It's kind of like a theme-based episode. But I could really tell, by the way, I've listened to your podcast, and by the way, because I'm assuming you write a script and then you.
Well, yeah, my process is pretty much watching the episode, taking notes along the way. So a lot of pausing, a lot of note taking, and sometimes it's hard for me. Like, should I include this? Should I not? Does this detail matter? But towards the end, it's more just like giving my thoughts. I don't write that out. It's mostly just the notes with my segments. That shit's traumatizing and that shit's heartwarming. I'm a Libra. October Libra, I gotta find balance and stuff. So, but yeah, that's just my process right now. Maybe along the way, adding more segments, bringing in guests, that would be great. I'm not only gonna focus on horror. I started with The Haunting of Hill House because, how I mentioned through the DMs, it's one of my favorite shows, and it deals with family dynamic. And, that's something I'm really interested in exploring in my writing. Not with like a white family, because that's the focus of that show, but with like, Mexican households. In my family specific, I took this quote from like Frida Kahlo that it's just like, I paint what I know. And that's very close to home, because I write about what I know. The stories that I write are like my family stories or things that I've heard along like the graveyard. Not the graveyard. Halloween. The vineyards? I think that's the same, right?
The
things I heard along the vineyards.
The grapeyard. Grape? Yeah.
I have no clue.
Heard it through the grapevine.
Grapevine.
Yeah.
Vineyard. I'm thinking wine, but we're at a brewery.
Yeah.
So.
Grapevine. Yeah.
But I finished the first season, which dealt with the haunting of Hill House, and now I'm moving on to another show that fucked me up, Mayor of Easttown. You could stream it on HBO Max if you're interested in following along with this story. So it just shows that impacted me in some way. That's what I'm focusing on.
And I was one of my questions was, are you only gonna base your seasons on like TV shows, or like, because for me, like, a lot of documentaries like fuck me up.
Oh my God. There are already a lot of people that are doing documentaries, but I might hop on that trend. I was just listening to my podcast on the way here. It's called True Crime Obsessed.
Okay, there's two girls, right?
No. It's a guy and a girl, and they cover documentaries. It's really, really good. But yeah, documentaries definitely mess me up. I'm not an avid watcher of documentaries, but I do find out a lot about them through that podcast.
Oh, okay.
So it's like...
Yeah, because there's a lot of them that, that you're like, what the heck?
Yes. A lot of crazy people out there, especially if they're crime focused, which is what I'm interested in. I'm really interested in like true crime and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, because one of my suggestions was gonna be I think it's called Abducted in Plain Sight.
Oh my God, I have thoughts about that documentary. If it's the one I'm remembering correctly, it was like the parents were really weird, right? And they just let their daughter be abducted literally in plain sight by the person that was close to them, which is usually what, when someone gets abducted, it's not like it's a really low percentage when it's like a stranger or someone random just picks up. It's usually someone that's close to you and stuff like that. So
your show's called, that show really fucked me up. And then you say, the word a lot. Do you get any, like, if your family members or somebody listens to it, are they like...
my family loves me for who I am. They know I curse. I'm bilingual. I speak Spanglish, English, Spanish, me puedo defender bien en los dos. Yeah. So they know me. They understand me. So before I, hopped on the podcast trend, I also used to do YouTube videos. Okay. And I would go to like restaurants in San Diego. That's where I was based at that time. I still am, but most of my time I'm here right now because of the pandemic. And actually, Mr. Gastelum, he, when I first started out, he let me know, like, you're cursing a lot. And I'm like, I know, I'm sorry, Mr. Gastelum. And he's like, well, it's just if you want to like branch out to do something more professional, they look at that. And I'm like, I've embraced it. I'm a person that curses. It's in the title of my podcast, which is hard with sponsors on Instagram. Because I try to do like the logo and like promote it. Via the Instagram, and they were like, it includes like curse words, so I had to make an Instagram friendly logo, which with the asterisk. No, even with the asterisk.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because for those of you that don't know, my podcast is That Show Fucked Me Up, but fucked is F asterisk CKED. Trying to be polite. I had to change it to effed just for that post that I wanted to promote.
Oh, okay,
yeah, and it let me because I had tried to do it before. I wonder if I try it again, if it'll let me, or maybe I'll get a strike. Yeah,
they're kind of picky about it. I remember one time I tried promoting Chamo's episode, and I had a picture of him. He was on stage, and he was smoking. And they were like, no, you can't promote that because he's smoking. I'm like, what, really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I have my issues with Instagram too.
Yeah, it's kind of weird. And then you see... other people like half naked and they're cool with it.
I know. You see, that's what I have a problem with. Like, I'm just trying to promote my small podcast that just started out.
yeah, it's crazy. So your next season, you said is gonna be, what's the show called?
Mayor of Easttown, starring Kate Winslet. So this one came out like last year. Yeah, and it deals with crime and, again, the family dynamic. That speaks to me. I've just learned to accept it. Messed up families with issues. All families have issues, but, everyone tries to portray themselves as the perfect family. And it's like once we see all those hidden skeletons, that's when it gets real. And I'm intrigued by that.
Oh, okay. Oh, and you said you like, crime, true crime, stuff like that. There's a podcast called in Mexicali called El Crimen. I don't know if you heard of it.
I've heard of it. I haven't listened to it yet, but it covers like a crime based in Mexicali.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, in Mexicali and like
Baja California.
Yeah, or sometimes they branch out to like Mexico, like South.
Yeah.
Actually, when I first heard their podcast, I'm like, they had just started, and I'm like, man, these guys have potential to, because true crime wasn't really that big in Mexico yet, so they were like kind of like.
That's true. It's more of like a phenomenon here in the United States.
So they kind of like picked up on that trend. So when I heard it, I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna have these guys on because I know I have potential. So they were a guest of mine. I think I don't know if it was my first Spanish episode. Mm-hmm. But yeah, they were on. They were really cool.
You did it in all Spanish?
Yeah, because they're reporters from Mexicali. So you can see them because they're actually reporters. So you see them on Canal 3 or 66. I don't know which channel they work for, but you can see them, and so they speak Spanish nomás. So
okay.
But yeah, it was fun. And they have like some of them are like.
You see, I tell people that I like true crime, not only because I'm intrigued by it, but because I like to be aware of the horrible people, of the horrible things that people are capable of doing. Yeah. Especially as a woman, especially as like a minority. Like you just have to be aware of your surroundings wherever you go.
Yeah.
And it sucks, but it's just how things are.
Yeah, and especially like here in Calexico, we don't hear much about we might hear like every so often might be some big thing happening, but. Excuse me, in Mexicali, we go to Mexicali like all the time, and we don't know who, there's a million people over there, and it's crazy. Some of the stories they talk about, it's like, damn, this happened like across the border, like where I go and eat tacos and hang out with the family is like, it's crazy. So you say you might have guests in the future, because we were talking before we started recording about how hard it is to be like a one person, but at the same time it's hard to have a co-host because scheduling. If they kind of fall off the wagon of what, I don't want to do this anymore, you end up so you kind of decided to do it on your own. So
let me just tell you this anecdote. I played tennis in high school, like I mentioned, and I like playing singles because I didn't have to depend on anyone, and if I had a shitty day and I played sucky, that was on me. And I couldn't blame it on anyone else. And when I was forced to play doubles, it's just like, okay, ponte las pilas, or to myself, like, why are you sucking? You're letting your partner down. Mm-hmm. And that's the same thing for me with the podcast as well. Like, I'm just doing my own thing. I have my set schedule that I'm supposed to be following. I'm falling a little behind, but so yeah, I just decided to do it myself. So it's going to be interesting when I do have guests, just changing that dynamic for myself. Like, just record all the way through, have those questions ready like you. Yeah. But I'm excited. I haven't figured out who I want to bring in yet, or like people, because when I started the podcast, I was like, I want to create a community of, TV junkies with the same kind of likes and dislikes. And I want the listeners in the community to be involved. Like if they want to bring in their ideas, or if they want to like talk about it. And for the bonus episode I had after I covered the Haunting of Hill House, I let people know, let me know your questions. Let me know how this show fucked you up. Because I'm interested, because I have a point of view that it's different from other people, and because my point of view is brought up by my experiences, my childhood and everything, and not everyone was raised the same way as I am. So it was really cool to see other people's like feedback and their questions, and just being able to incorporate it into the episode, because I feel like it's cool when you're like listening to a podcast and you're like, oh, that's my name, like, I asked that question, or I wanted to know that, and she included it. So to me, that kind of happened one time when I don't know if you know who Bombi Lee is. He's a comedian. I'm not sure. He has a podcast called Tiger Belly. So one time I tweeted something and they replied, and then they're like, "Oh, maybe you should call us." So I called in, and I almost messed it up because he hates being called. There's this other Asian comedian that people kind of like, "Oh, you look like," or I thought you were. Oh my God, no. So I called, hey, is this his name's that fan, the other guy.
is this that fan? And he hung up on me. I was like, what? Oh shit! I messed up this opportunity to be on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I called back and they answered, and I was rambling, and he kind of got bored of me, and he hung up on me. So I was like, but I was like super nervous. I was like, what should I say? I kind of talked about I was from Calexico, so like people were like. I had a couple of friends that were like, "Oh, were you on the podcast? Because my brother told me that he heard the podcast." And like, "Oh, cool." So yeah, like I get that what you're saying about
being excited.
Yeah, being included in a podcast or something that you listen to, or being part of feeling part of this community, like a community of
So maybe just like bringing listeners in and asking them questions, like not even having them write in, like actually invite them and have them be a guest and stuff like that. So I'm still workshopping it, but we'll see.
And then with Anchor, you can also do they could leave you like voicemails and stuff, huh?
Yeah. I haven't tried that feature yet. I think I tried it once and it wasn't that great, but I was using my phone. So the Anchor app through my phone. So maybe I'll give it a shot again, but we'll see.
Yeah, I've never used it. But yeah, maybe I should just to kind of like see if I can include people, because sometimes I'll get people like wanting to ask questions or suggest guests, so that feature should be pretty cool, like to include the listeners.
I saw one this podcast that recently came out as well. It's called like Aigos Mio. And they cover like Latin American and Caribbean like horror and folklore stories. And she says that, leave me a voicemail. And like, it's a direct line and something where you could just like leave your questions, like actual voice, your questions and suggestions and stuff like that. So I wonder how she's doing it.
Yeah, I don't know. You're talking about I guess you listen to other like podcasts that deal with ghost or
yes.
Do you we're in a day away from Halloween? Do you have any like ghost stories that you've experienced or like?
Oh hell yeah!
Really?
Yes.
Oh wow!
I 100% believe in ghosts.
Really?
110%. I don't know. I wouldn't call myself sensitive. Like there's some people that actually like experience, or they come into a room and they're like, it changes. It's sometimes just like a sensation that you get like, what's wrong? When I was little, I woke up, I was still living in Mexicali, maybe like I was like 5 or something. And my room was at the end of the hallway. And I saw the light in the kitchen was on. And I was like, my parents are up. Like, what are they doing up? Y de metiche, I woke up and I went to go see, but the light wasn't on. The kitchen, the fridge was open, and like the light bulb turns on when you open it, so that was the light that I was seeing. And I peeked in and I saw a little green man, like all dressed in green, like poking, like a duende, poking inside the fridge. And scared old me just ran back to my room and like threw the covers on and like fell back asleep. But I clearly remember it. And I always tell this story. I'm like, I saw a duende in my house in Mexicali.
Dang. And I was talking about duendes the other day with my coworkers, because like stuff in our office was moving. Like,
they love to move shit around.
And I'm like, maybe it's a duende, but I was just messing around. Like, because I'm like, I told you when we were talking about being on the podcast, I was like, I've never seen that show, because I'm really scared of, I don't like watching scary shows and movies. But the funny thing is, like, I like watching, I watch a lot of YouTube where people go to these haunted cemeteries. Or, like, I like watching that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm really, really, I'm a pussy when it comes to all that stuff. So, like, it's weird because, like I said, I won't watch, like, movies that I know are, fake. But I'll watch stuff that might be real. So it's like, I'm weird in that way. But yeah, I was talking about duendes, and I started Googling like duendes and like pictures of duendes, and some of them you can tell right away that are fake. But so you, like, how tall was?
I was 5. I was like really young, so I couldn't give you like an actual height. But like, como metiéndose like in the fridge, like trying to look through stuff. Like maybe it was hungry. I don't know. And it was like perfect time to go rummaging through their fridge. But yeah, I was scared.
Was he like his skin green, or was he?
No, what he was, from what I remember, what he was wearing was green.
Okay.
Yeah, and I just a short person, all in green, and I was like, and later on in life, I put 2 and 2 together, and I was like, That was a duende.
Yeah.
I saw a duende when I was younger.
And duendes are mostly, you know, like from people talk about duendes in
In Latin America, I think they're fairly big, but you know they say duendes are big gamblers and big drinkers, and they like to steal stuff. So you know maybe you just leave a little tequila out y que le baja poquito, or if you leave a deck of cards out, and you know they're gonna be shifted differently the next day.
Yeah, true. Maybe that'll be a good way to like see if there's a duende in your house. Have you been any places that are like supposedly?
You know, I don't remember this, but I went on a road trip up to like San Francisco, maybe when I was like 15, around that age, and we went to that house where the lady just kept building stuff. I keep forgetting.
I was thinking about it too on the way over here. Her husband made the guns.
Yeah, but she just kept building stuff because, you know, she felt it was bad luck to stop building. So it was just like they have like a bunch of windows everywhere, doors that don't go anywhere, and, you know, bathrooms in weird places.
The story that I heard was that since her husband made this gun from like, I can't remember what the name of the gun is, but it's like a really popular, they still sell those guns now. But he was the inventor of the gun. Yeah. So her mentality was that all these people that were killed because of those guns were coming back and haunting her. So she had to make all these rooms so that
they could never find her. There you go. So, there you go.
And then there's actually a movie about it. I can't remember what it's called, but I saw that movie. I was one of the ones that I've seen because I could stand it. It wasn't that scary. But yeah, that's the story, that she kept building these rooms to kind of like trigger these ghosts that were trying to haunt her because of her husband creating that gun. Yeah, and
they didn't stop, you know, building till the day she died. Literally, like she died, and they called
the contractor.
The contractor, ya pueden parar, descansen.
Yeah, because she would like tear stuff down and then build it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's like you said, there's doors that went to like a wall, or doors that went to like like a 2-story, and then you would fall off the house and stuff like that.
Like really short stairs and stuff like that. Yeah, but I just know that they were paid well, so I feel like they didn't care if they had to like keep on building as long as they were getting paid.
Job security. Talk about
a job's a job.
Yeah. So you visited that house? Remember?
I visited, but I don't remember going there. My mom was like, "Yeah, we went there," and I'm like, "Are you sure? Are you sure I was there?" Where else that it's haunted? I really want to go to the one in San Diego. I feel like I've been there too, but maybe when I was younger. The one that's in Old Town. They say that one's haunted too. So yeah. Maybe.
I remember here in the valley they had I don't know if it's still there, a school in Heber that supposedly was haunted. I remember I went there. I don't know. We kind of heard things, but
yeah.
I mean, it could have been like a homeless person living in the school or whatever. But yeah, we heard steps and stuff like that.
And it's abandoned, or?
Yeah, it's an old school. Like it was, like, you know, the main street in Heber. Like you could see it like toward. If you look north, you could see the school. It was like in a back road or something. So we went, and then there was these. You know that Dannenberg. You know that street. Like if you're at the mall and then you go, there's some tracks. Like behind there used to be like this. It was kind of like, it looked like a Navy base, or because it had like little houses and then like a church and all, and that, I mean, they said it was haunted. We went there and it looked creepy as hell. And yeah, we were just there for a little bit and we walked out. But I mean, other than that, I've never had any experiences.
Yeah.
But like I said, I like watching them, like Ghost Hunters on the Travel Channel. I watch it, and it's funny because like you watch it and then every episode is like, oh, in this episode we're gonna catch something, and I mean it's always the same thing, like the noises, or you use
the
that
EVP.
Yeah, and it's like, yeah, but you guys never catch like an actual apparition or stuff like that. So, but I mean, I'm always like hooked. Like I can watch that all day, and even though like I never get to see something that's definitive, like I'll keep watching.
You're like, it's true. Yeah. I believe you 100%. Yeah. No, yeah, for the Ghost Hunters one, I think I watched the one where they went to the Isla de las Muñecas over there in Mexico. Yeah, I saw that one because dolls are just creepy.
Yeah.
And if there's a bunch of them hanging from like trees,
Makes it cute. And what's the story? Do you know the story behind it?
I think a little girl died. And they, like, the grandpa just started putting up muñecas, if I remember correctly. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, they say that isla is haunted. And it's right by, what is it?
Is it Chapultepec?
Yeah, where you go in the little...
Yeah, and those little boats with the flowers.
Yeah,
I think
you passed through there.
Yeah, I think it's Chapultepec.
I think so. Or no, because that's...
No?
I don't know. Who cares?
Yeah, you can tell we don't know our Mexican... like culture or places, right? So what other podcasts do you listen to? Because it's funny because the one time I interviewed Michael Garcia, he had the right now I don't think he's doing it anymore. It's called EDU with You, and I told him, what podcast do you listen to? He's like, oh, I don't listen to podcasts. I'm like, do you have a podcast and you don't listen to podcasts?
It's the opposite with me. My sister makes fun of me because I stopped listening to music
Yeah,
at
me too.
all, and then she's like, this was during the pandemic. She was like, once the bars open up again, you're not going to know any of the songs and it's going to be so embarrassing. And I don't.
Yes.
I just listen to podcasts nonstop. I go to sleep listening to podcasts.
Yeah, me too.
I set my Google Home. I'm like, oh, turn off in 15 minutes and I'll be asleep. But I think I started off with Crime Junkies. Then I went to My Favorite Murder. So a lot of crime-based stuff. And... True Crime Obsessed covers all the documentaries. And That's Why We Drink. And that was really cool because one of the hosts covers a ghost story or some folklore or some stuff. And the other one covers like a true crime stuff. So what they're passionate about, and they tell these stories to each other. What else? I did, just a lot of true crime stuff. That's my thing.
Yeah.
That's my thing. I was like, my idea of a first date is just like, oh, who do you think killed Joan Benet Ramsey? You know, like, was it, the family? Was it the brother? Who was it?
Yeah.
Like, I'm that weirdo.
No, you know what? I like that. I mean, I don't like it, but, it's the John Benet Ramsey story. Like, because I was a little kid when that happened.
Yeah.
Like, I saw it on the news all the time. It was like, man, poor little girl. Like, and just the whole thing, her being like in these pageants and where it seemed like her parents were kind of like using her in a way, and then this happened. And it's like, and the whole story was like super weird and
yeah, like the abduction or like the note. It was written on their like what is it called? There's a name for the specific paper or
like
whatever.
Stationery, is it? Or?
Yeah, I don't know, but yeah, it was written and it was on their like handwriting, and
yeah,
it's just I'm just sometimes I'm like upset, like these cases that should be solved that aren't, or or asking people like, oh, did OJ really kill like those people, or was it his son? Just like all the theories and stuff like that.
No, and like for them, like they made money off of their daughter's murder, and it's crazy that up till this day, like we don't know what really happened. People have like their theories, and
like who has the right to that story? Like it's the parents, right?
Yeah.
Or who? Like I'm not sure. And you see documentaries come out back to back to back about the same thing, but there's no answers.
Yeah, because there's been so many documentaries and even movies about it, and like. And like you said, like they own the story, so obviously they're getting paid for people to tell their
getting
story.
some royalties or something.
It's crazy.
But yeah, now with genealogy though, they're gonna start solving a lot of unsolved like mysteries.
yeah, because a lot of people are using, for people that don't know, like those 23andMe and all these things. You give out your DNA and then
they find like matches with like someone in your family, and then.
And I think the cool part about that is that people are being exonerated from prison because they can tell that they didn't commit the crime. So like they're being released after like freaking 30 years in prison.
Oh my God. How do you repay a person back for like putting them in jail and it was a mistake?
Yeah.
Like no amount of money could give you that time back, No. And sometimes they don't even get paid.
There was a documentary, I think it was on Netflix, about one case where there was a black man that went to prison for some crime that somebody got killed, and it was this town where like the coroner was like had history of being a racist.
Oh,
so
my God. Those are the worst, saddest stories.
Yeah, so he went to prison. He came out. He might have gotten some money, but eventually, like, he ended up dying because he committed I think he OD'd or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's like, it sucks because, like, you spend your life in prison, most of your life in prison, because he was there like at least 20 years. And he came out and he died.
Like, how do you cope?
Yeah.
With all that time lost? Well, you can't blame them for turning to drugs and stuff like that.
It's crazy. Yeah, and those are the kind of shows that also, fuck you up. So
oh my God, they do. It's all that real, like, stuff that happened to people out in the world where you're just like, I can't believe this happened. This could have been so easily avoided. And now this, not even just one person, this whole family is ruined. Yeah. So. Yeah,
and it's crazy that hopefully that one of your seasons will be about something like that, like a kind of like a true story about, especially imagine like having a story that happened here in the valley or something that that'd be cool.
That's a good idea. Let me take a note.
Yeah. Apúntale. So besides the one that, have you had any other?
Small stuff, the other day, actually, I was recording the podcast and I was like, oh, what are the signs that your house is haunted or whatever? Because I wanted to and it was just like, oh, if you hear like steps or someone calling out your name, blah, blah, blah. The next morning, te lo juro, no te miento. It was like 5 a.m. I just hear, Marielle. That shit woke me up so fast. I got up and I'm like, fuck no, leave me alone. Like, because if a ghost is bothering you, you gotta, stand up to it. You gotta, like, set your foot down and be like, no, this is my house, get out. So I was like, fuck no, leave me alone. But then I thought about it and I'm like, oh, what if it gets mad at me? I was like, what if it gets hard? And I'm like, I'm sorry, but just let me go back to sleep. Like, I worked in the morning. So I was like, I really cherish those extra hours that I could sleep. Yeah. And now a ghost is waking me up. At 5 a.m, I have 3 more hours left. Yeah,
I think we've all had those experiences where like we kind of hear, or because I think that's happened to me, not my name, but like hey or something like a voice. I think it's happened to me a couple of times where it's like, what? And I mean, for me, to me, I just ignore it because I don't want to even think about it.
You're like, leave me alone.
Yeah, I'll put my headphones on. It's like. Because, I think it's happened. I don't think it's happened at my house right now, but, like, when I used to live in the apartments and when I was growing up, I do remember, hearing...
weird stuff.
Yeah. And even, like, growing up, because I used to live in apartments and I was two-story, when I first got there, I didn't know that when my neighbors went up the stairs, I could hear the steps. So, like, that should, freaked me out because I was like, what the heck? Like, everybody's asleep. Why do I hear steps? And it was the neighbors, going up the stairs. But and something that happened in the apartments as well was like this guy committed suicide and he was in his house like for a couple of days before my dad found him because my dad was a manager and the neighbors were complaining about
smell.
Yeah. So my dad cleaned the air ducts. He
looked,
no, and he's like, you know what? I haven't seen this guy in a couple of days. So he opened the door and like all these flies came out because he was already decomposing.
Oh my God. I hope I never smell what a decomposing body smells like, but just like hearing stories of people, like it's a very distinct smell. And you'll never forget it. Yeah. You'll never forget it.
And so like when that happened, like because I used to live in the apartments, where when you're coming up Rockwood, there's apartments that have like a Christ and a Virgin Mary painted on the side. Yeah. So I grew up in those apartments. So the guy died. His apartment was close to the canal, and the canal always has that
the stigma
of the La Llorona and all that.
Sí.
So we were like shit, like going up the bridge. Like whenever I would visit friends, on this side of the bridge, that I would have to cross the canal, like was freaky. So now, like, coming back and having to walk by the guy's apartment where it was like, oh, shit, like, I would run through there because I didn't want to, like, see anything and be freaked out. But, I mean, I don't think anybody ever experienced anything there, but that kind of, like...
It freaks you out, especially because, well, the idea of that if someone dies in a place and they hadn't finished business, they stay there, And, maybe just go ask those tenants, like, hey, you've ever experienced anything? Yeah. I'm curious.
That'll be something that to be kind of fun to investigate and put it like on a podcast or something. And then I used to work at Applebee's, like for 5 years. I used to work in the kitchen. So we were always the last ones to leave. Like the servers would leave. So it would just be like us and the managers. So when I got there, I remember the cooks because we used to clean the kitchen. So they used to tell me like, oh, there's a little girl here that, you know, you could. So like every time like
they were for real?
That's everybody said, there's a little girl here. There's a little girl here. And I think somebody said that, yeah, they saw her or they heard her or something. So every time I would stay by myself to, you know, finish cleaning the kitchen, whenever I had to go to the back or throw out the trash, I would always call my friend and
stay with me.
Yeah, that was me. Like, dude, I'm gonna throw out the trash, so just be on the phone with me because I don't want to get freaked out. So like, yeah, I would throw the trash like super fast and go back in. And whenever I was done, and I was like, because you would have to like turn off the lights. So like there was 2 switches. One, because the kitchen was separated in 2, right? Where you prepare stuff and then where you cook stuff. So like you would have to turn off the lights in the back and then the ones in the front. So like I would turn off the lights in the back and then run to the front and turn off the lights in the front because like, hell no, I don't want to see this little girl here. Like,
No.
But and then yeah, like whenever we were done, like, you know, and if I was waiting in the front, because normally the manager, because sometimes it was a female manager, she'd be like, hey, can you wait for me? I'm closing up and stuff. I'm like, all right. So I would wait in the bar and just sitting there like my phone or whatever. And like, yeah, you would hear stuff like pots falling but you'd be like, maybe I left something like not right. And so
I don't like that. I don't like, because it makes a really loud sound, también. And then you go out there and there's nothing out of place.
Oh, hell no. I would never go back there.
No, it happened to me in my apartment in San Diego where, 3 a.m. is considered the witching hour. And I'm paranoid. So if I wake up and I need to go pee at that time, I'm like, I'll wait till 4. Like, that's how paranoid I am. Or I'm like, I'll just hold it, go back to sleep.
Yeah, me too.
Which is, I don't recommend this. Don't be paranoid like me. But it's just, something that is already within you. And it was like 3 a.m. And I didn't know it was 3 a.m. because I was scared to check the phone, first of all. And then I hear something. I have a 1-bedroom apartment, but on the other, like in the living room or in the kitchen, I heard something like fall down, and I'm like, nope, I am not gonna go check that. I know. And then the next morning, I checked, there was nothing out of place, and I'm like, how does a sound that loud happen and nothing fell, and there was no reason for anything to fall, So it was like, just hearing those sounds at night.
Yeah, and then that's a funny thing that for some reason, there's a lot of times when I wake up and it's like 3 a.m., I'm like, fuck.
You're like, no.
Yeah. So I try to try to go back to sleep and just the quietness of the house at that time like freaks me out. So like I'll put on my earbuds and put like a podcast and like go back to sleep. The other day, my dog was crying because she wanted to go pee. So I woke up and I was going towards the sliding door in the kitchen to let her out, and I turned around and it was 3 a.m. I was like, fuck. I'm like, you better hurry your ass up and pee because I want to go back to the room. Yeah, because I mean, maybe it's coincidence, maybe it's nothing, the 3 a.m. thing, but just hearing it so much, like, it's in your mind and it freaks you out. And yeah, like, it's crazy that it happens to me often where like I'll wake up and I'll get my phone and check the time and it's like 3 something. Like, fuck, man, why? This time? Why at this time do I have to wake up? And because I have sleep apnea, so when I used to not have my CPAP machine, like I would wake up a lot and it was often 3 in the morning. So.
Yeah, no. In this other apartment, when I was going to school at UCSD, so I was living in La Jolla, I had a lot of sleep paralysis. Like a lot. When I would take naps, not at night, it was usually during naps, and I used to take a lot of naps. Now I don't have time. But usually when you're sleeping like facing up, that's when you get sleep paralysis, and I would get it a lot at that place. And once I moved out, it stopped happening. I rarely get it now. But one time, another creepy thing happened at that apartment. My roommate, because I was poor and I had to share a room, like everyone has had to at some point in their life when they go out to college. she would usually have really morning shifts. So like a veces como estás despierto but not really, so you feel someone like rummaging around, and I don't think a big deal out of it. I heard her like put on some like perfume, and I smelled it. I smelled the perfume that she used, and then I felt like a hand like kind of like touch my feet, like as if they were walking by, like if maybe she had like bumped into my bed or something. And then later on that day I was like, hey dude, did you leave really early for work? And she's like, I didn't sleep at the apartment, I stayed at my friend's house. And I'm like, what? Are you sure? I was like, well, a ghost was putting on your perfume, so you may want to charge them for like this extra sprays.
Damn, that's crazy. And speaking about sleep paralysis, what do they call it in Spanish?
Que se te sube el muerto.
Yeah, that's I mean, I don't know if you believe in that or.
You know, maybe. I know people sometimes see stuff that they're able to open their eyes. I've never been able to open my, thank God. Nope. Imagine not being able to move and see. No. Shit. I'm already paranoid as it is. Just like seeing something in the corner of your room. And that's like one of my nightmares. I don't know. Well, you don't watch scary stuff. I was going to ask you if you watched the movie Gerald's Game. It's based on a Stephen King book.
Is it? Yeah, it's the one with the lady is tied up.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah, I saw that.
The guy that she sees in the corner, like in the dark corner of her room, like that shit still scares me to this day.
You know what? And it's crazy because that monster, whatever, is not even that scary looking. But it still freaks you out, you know?
And it's even more freaky because it was an actual person. Mm-hmm. Oh, spoiler.
Yeah.
Sorry, I cut that out.
Yeah. I mean, it's been out for a while. If you haven't seen it.
If you haven't seen it, you're not into that type of genre. So, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I did watch that. And yeah, I think that one wasn't, I mean, the monster or the person was scary, but the whole movie was like a mind freak like kind of thing. Because, you know, how she was going through all these things like, tied up and yeah, that one was crazy. That
was a really good movie. I really liked that one. And Carla Gugino, I don't know how to pronounce her last name, probably Italian. She's such a great actress. She comes out in The Haunting of Hill House. She's one of the main characters.
Yeah. So. And yeah, you've been telling me that it's not that scary, but I've heard, you know, when I've read reviews and people talking about it, there's so much because I guess the director did a really good job of putting shit in the background, or like
amazing job. And but that doesn't scare you. That just like makes it like kind of like, oh my God, I see something there and they're not seeing it. So it puts you in that position of like being able to see something that the characters aren't able to. So it's like a pretty cool point of view. I'm not into jump scares in movies. I think they're tacky. I don't see the point of jump scares. But he has some really, really good ones. Okay. Because I know like in the horror genre or scary movie genre, it's like they prepare you for that jump scare, you know? Mm-hmm. So they're building up that anxiety either by like the music or like the background music and stuff like that, or like just like starting to zoom in or something. Yeah. And I don't like that. I don't like feeling anxious.
And that's why I don't watch stuff.
And the jump scares in this show, they're so eloquently placed because you don't feel them coming. Oh, okay. So it makes it even more, like the reaction even more big.
So you don't get the stress of the jump scare because it just happens.
It just happens, okay. And you don't expect it. And there's actually a scene where the actresses thought their jump scare was gonna come later, and Mike Flanagan, the director, was like told the actors that was gonna do the jump scare like come a few seconds before. They didn't expect it, so it's like a really real like reaction. Oh, okay. You know?
Yeah, and I think I started watching it one time. I watched like the first half of the first episode. Mm-hmm. Because I've heard so many things about that show, but I was like, man, I was stressed about it just because of the things I read. Like I said, where they say that he did a good job of the backgrounds and the ghosts and all these things. It's like, man, I hype myself up before watching this show so that I scare myself. So I might go back and watch it, but yeah,
I think it's just getting through that first episode. Okay. Getting through the first episode, the ending is great of the first episode because it really like draws you into wanting to know more. But yeah, my respects to Mike Flanagan. He's out here doing good work for the horror genre, and especially with TV shows. Mm-hmm. you know, you don't really, I know there are a lot of like TV shows that are like the horror genre, but there's more like slasher also. And I'm not really into slasher films or slasher TV shows. I like a good plot as a writer. I like good dialogue, and the dialogue is really important to me. So that's what you're getting from like that type of shows.
Like, because I grew up in the 90s, 80s, 90s. And, you know, back then you got like, you know, Jason and Freddy.
See, and I don't like those.
And so I grew up with those, which is slasher / you know, the dialogue is super bad. You know, so like I like that kind of genre when it comes to horror movies.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of horror movies that were back, you know, made in the 80s, 90s that were, you know, decent. What's that one? Something about baby where there's
Rosemary's Baby.
Yeah, that one's a good one.
And I've never watched it. I listened to a podcast recently. My homies up in LA, they have a podcast called Cinema Foos.
Oh, okay.
And they just cover like movies, but they cover like an old movie with like a newer film that just came out. And I think they did Rosemary's Baby with the last Conjuring movie. The Devil Made Me Do It. So they discuss the older one first or the newer one first, and then they go with the older one. So I got a little glimpse of what it was about, but it looks really interesting.
Yeah, I saw that one growing up, and obviously The Exorcist, you know, that shit freaked me out. That one was, you know, I was like, I want to say like 5 or 6 when I watched it with my mom and my sister. I was like, why?
You're like, why did you make me watch this?
Mom, why did you allow me to watch this shit? But yet again, you know, now our kids watch, you know, worse shit than we used to watch when we were kids.
Oh, yeah.
It's like YouTube and all these things, you know.
It's just so much access in the phones.
Yeah. And then, you know, I wanted to ask you, like, I don't know if you play any video games, but, you know, that you like, you know, horror or true crime. There's a lot of video games that kind of like deal with that. I don't know if you ever...
No, I'm not. I never got into a video game. It's just the hand-eye coordination. I don't have that. My brother's really into video games. My sister plays occasionally, not anymore. Before she did. But we did get the virtual reality headset.
Oh, okay.
My brother was like, let's buy this scary game. But it made me really anxious, too, because I was like the pop-up scares. It's the whole thing with the pop-up scares that I don't like.
I can't remember what the name of the game is. But yeah, when VR started becoming a thing, there was this one game that, you know, people were playing. Because I watch a lot of YouTube. I think way too much YouTube. And I like to watch scary video games, people playing them. I don't play them myself, but I like watching people. Yeah. Because I've tried. There's one video game called Five Nights at Freddy. I don't know if you heard of it.
What is it about?
It's about these bears, these animatronic bears that kind of like a Chuck E. Cheese where they...
Yes, I played that one in the virtual reality.
Oh, really?
Headset. Yeah. Where you have to do like a task.
Yeah.
Was it like you're looking at the video footage, right?
Yeah.
And trying to see where they're at and closing and opening the door. Yeah. You see, that one made me anxious.
Yeah. Yeah, it made me anxious too. But it just there's, and I think you'll like the whole. And I'll send you some videos, some YouTube videos about that story, because it's, you know, it has a really cool story behind it. The guy that made the game has written like tons of books about the game that are related to the game, and you get bits and pieces of trying to figure out who the ghosts are, and it's really cool. I think that's one of my favorite video game. What do you call it when it's a kind of like the Friday the 13th. It's a what do you call it when it's the whole, like that whole world or
like
whatever.
That universe, or
yeah, I mean, yeah, you could call it a universe, but you know, that whole Five Nights at Freddy thing, it's really cool. The story behind
like
it,
it's branched out and like became this whole thing.
Yeah, and you know, especially like some of the YouTubers that cover it, you know, they go really into the story and they look at clues and they buy the books and they read the books, and because it's ARG, kind of like they bring in the people into it, and they tie the books. There's videos, there's the video games. They tie everything together, and I don't know. I just find it like really, really interesting, and I think that something like that would be cool, like for your podcast, where like you see how these video games or these movies tie, because there's movies that tie into video games.
Yeah.
And I'm rambling, but because I really enjoy that Five Nights at Freddy universe. It's really, really the guy that wrote it, really thought out the whole process or the whole how to branch out. It's really cool.
The back end part.
Yeah, and like I said, I'll send you some videos just so you can kind of like see what I'm talking about.
Send them my way.
Because some of these guys, like, I mean, they make a living out of YouTube, and that's how they do it, and they really go into it. And it's not only Five Nights at Freddy. There's other people that create like footage, like VHSs that are fake, but they create them, and then they have like a little plot behind them. It's really cool. I think YouTube does a really good job of, or YouTubers do a really good job of creating like these worlds where people can dive into and get clues. And it's really, I don't know, I think I'm rambling, but
no, I get that. I see that on like TV shows, and just going back to The Haunting of Hill House, it's tied to like different worlds as well. Especially like different stuff that the director has created and worked on. So it's all tied back together, and it's just that one clue.
Because The Conjuring also is kind of like part of a universe, right?
Yeah, The Conjuring is part of like a whole bunch of other movies, like The Nun. The Llorona movie is also part of the Conjuring universe, all the Annabelle stuff. So it all ties back to the Warrens and their story. But
and supposedly that's real, right?
Oh yeah. They had the museum with all the haunted items at their house and
Annabelle
stuff like that. But it turns out that their love story wasn't really real. So just putting that out there. Do your research, people. People glorifying the Warrens.
So the Warrens are like a real...
Yeah, they were a real like couple, and they they went and did their stuff with ghosts, and it was mostly like the wife that was like clairvoyant, and then like the husband, he was more like trying to discredit it. So if he found something that he couldn't discredit, that's when like shit went real. Like got real. But yeah, their story is super real.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I seen because of October and Halloween, I've seen people visiting the house where I think that started. I don't know if you watch BuzzFeed Unsolved, or yeah, I think it's BuzzFeed Unsolved. It's Shane, this guy, and this other, I can't remember the other guy's name. So they go to like these haunted places, and one of them doesn't believe in ghosts, and the other one does. So
what is that name when they're called? There's a specific word for it. They're I can't recall it this time, but it's when they just don't believe in anything, and they're just like, okay, that's fake, and this is how I can prove that it's fake.
Yeah. And it's funny because they'll hear things, or open doors will open, stuff like that. And he's like, he'll try to discredit it, like, oh look, I'm jumping here, and like the door open, or a draft could have come in. So, but yeah, BuzzFeed Unsolved. That's this week. I think last week they went to the Conjuring house, and that's how I kind of like find out that like this shit's real. And I've never seen none of the Conjurings. I haven't seen the Nun. I think the Nun is freaking scary. Like I see, like if I'm scrolling and I see like the
a
poster,
picture of her.
It's kind of creepy.
Yeah, it is creepy.
Yeah.
And like I didn't really get into horror movies till later in life. Because at first it was like, when you're anxious, I'm the type of person that laughs. So imagine me in the movie theater watching a horror film and laughing all throughout it because I'm scared. Yeah. So I'm not the best person to go to the movie theater with, just an FYI.
So when you watch now the shows to write for your podcast, do you watch them alone? Because I bet it'll be a pain in the ass, like you pausing it.
I have to watch it alone. And no one wants to sit down and see me write notes for it. Because it's also like, oh, I didn't catch all that. Let me rewind it, and then watching the same scene over and over again. It's a little tiring, but it's the work that has to be done.
Yeah, I bet it's time consuming because not only are you watching the shows, you're writing notes.
Which is already taking like an hour or so, plus the writing the notes.
Plus recording the podcast,
editing, doing the social media.
I think the social media is something that people like kind of like don't know how time consuming it is.
It's so time consuming. Yeah. Sometimes I'm like, oh shit, I did the Instagram post, but I forgot to post on Twitter. Or I need to create a Canva post, and that takes time too. Or when I want to add a clip from like the actual episode, I have to download the clip, add it to and people expect you to keep posting stuff even when you don't have an episode that's going to be released soon. They're like, gotta keep them engaged. So
yeah, and I'm not the type of person that does a lot, like personally does a lot of social media. So like doing it for the podcast is kind of like been kind of hard for me. but I know it's like when I start posting stuff, like I can see like more traffic on my YouTube or the Anchor. Like you see it, so it's like, you know, it helps, but sometimes they're like, oh man, I have to do it. Even my website, I've neglected my website. Before I would do like a little blog post about the episode, put links and stuff, and I haven't done it in so long. I told my son, you know, listen to my podcast and write a blog post and I'll give you $10. He hasn't done it yet, but it's still, the offer is still there for him. But so anything else that, you know, we've been talking about a whole lot of different things. But anything else
very dynamic individual.
Yeah. And you know what? I kind of like these episodes because, you know, we're both kind of creators. We have a podcast. We kind of like get to shoot ideas back and forth and see what works. And because, you know, dealing with, you know, interviews, you know, sometimes like people expect for you to ask like certain questions or, you know, talk about certain topics. But, you know, when it's a fellow podcaster, it's
easier because it's more like conversational and it's just like not a lot of pauses and stuff like that. Like, oh, I answered the question. Ask me another one.
Yeah. Or like you'll say something that'll remind me of something that I did or didn't do, and it's like we'll go back and forth. So I was looking forward to this because I haven't done, you know, an episode where I talked to another creator, and it's, I know a lot of people don't like the word creator, but you know,
I like it because I have my other Instagram, Marielle_the_creative. Little shout out to myself. And it's just like, you know, I'm a poet, playwright, now podcaster. I've been doing a little acting. I'm part of this playwriting group called Paletras. It's based in San Diego. And we do like little projects. We had one for Dia de las Madres where we created like a 10-minute play and then we put it together. It was all via Zoom because the pandemic. Yeah. We're having one for Dia de los Muertos. Okay, and I'll post about that in my Instagram. And, you know, but that one we actually got together, recorded. So it's not going to be via like just Zoom, like people on screens. It's actually recorded on a stage with a green screen. So that should be fun. My play, Fiesta en Tiempos de Pandemia, got produced. And, you know, some Catrines, you know, a little some culture for Dia de los Muertos. And, you know, I acted on some of my peers' plays. Okay. So if y'all want to check that out, that would be great.
So they can find information on that on your personal?
Yeah. I'll probably share it on the podcast too. Oh, okay. You can find it anywhere. Just look up my name. It's not a common name.
Yeah. So anything else that you would like to talk about?
Yes. I wanted to share, you know, this is Que Pasa Calexico. Like I mentioned, I'm a poet. I wanted, if you would let me, to share 2 of my poems about Calexico.
Yeah. Go on.
Let me pull them up real quick.
Do you know by any chance Carla Cordero?
Carla Cordero.
She's also a poet.
Yes. I have her book.
Okay,
yeah. I connected with her via Instagram. Okay. So I know of her. Yeah, and I also know she's from Calexico.
Yeah, I had her on the podcast a long time ago.
Yeah. Okay. Let me... One's in Spanish and one's in English. Which one? More Spanglish. Which one do you want me to start with?
Start with the English one and then end with the Spanglish.
Okay. This one is called Desert Child. I am a desert child, one who isn't afraid of the heat. A child who cherishes it, invites it in to stay, welcomes it with open arms. Bienvenido, te estaba esperando. I am independent, the same way that everyone who has the sun inside them is. Who needs guidance when the sun has always lit my path? Who needs another person when the sun touching my skin feels just as good as a hug? The people who aren't from here don't understand it. How something they detest so much we could love. Pinche calor insoportable, pero nosotros lo soportamos. With a smile on our face, a cold beer in our hand, and with eyes that scream out into the world. Thank God I'm from here, because I don't know who I would be if I wasn't.
Wow, that's pretty cool. I like it.
I like
it. Nice.
Yeah, that one I wrote back in, exactly a year ago. October, well, not a little bit more. October 1st, 2020.
What's the name of it?
Desert Child.
Desert Child.
Yes, and this other one is just, you know, plain called Calexico. It's the one in Spanish. Calexico. ¿Quién me quiere como tú me quieres? Quisiera poder contestar esa pregunta. Quisiera poder tener una lista grande, innumerable, pero no la tengo. En la lista del mandado nomás tengo una cosa. A ti, mi Calexico. La ciudad del sol, del calor insoportable. Pero la gente de aquí es fuerte. La gente de aquí soporta lo que otros no conocen. El que no conoce el calor no sabe de amor. No sabe del abrazo que nos da el sol. Un abrazo irreplicable. El abrazo que nadie pidió, pero que todos necesitaban. Gracias a Dios por el calor. La niña se fue, pero nunca te olvidó. ¿Cómo olvidarte? ¿Cómo reemplazarte? Calexico, donde fui y soy feliz. Donde mi familia es feliz. Nunca se olvida tu primer hogar. Mi hogar vive en mi corazón. La niña nunca se fue. En cualquier parte del mundo que esté, Calexico vive en su corazón.
Wow. Pretty cool. I like it. Dang,
Thank you.
Both of them are really, really good. Thank you for sharing those.
Of course, it's the perk of being bilingual.
Yeah.
You can share your art with more people, double the people.
Yeah, and you know what? When we were talking, I don't know if I mentioned it during our podcast, but listening to your podcast kind of like really shows how you're really confident and comfortable, with yourself, and because like I said, like being like one person, like talking about or writing and doing poems, like I mean, not anybody can do it.
Yeah,
it's hard, and you do a really good job at it. Like it's not only in your poetry, but with your podcast, you could tell how your creativity shows when you're listening to your podcast, and kudos to you on that.
Yeah, I like talking, like you just realized that. Writing has always been an outlet for me. I'm not very verbal with my emotions. It's just something, I don't know if it was just like repressed as a child or what, but I don't like talking about my feelings.
I'm like that too.
So it's just like if I put it on on paper, I write it out, and it's just like my way of expressing myself. It's my way, como me desahogo de esa manera.
Yeah.
And I do it also with my plays, just like writing dialogue and stuff like that. At some point, you catch me like laughing at it, or you catch me crying. Like I'm just the type of person that feels a lot, but I don't express it, you know?
Okay.
So I had to find an outlet so that this is how I do it.
Yeah.
Just by being creative, finding creative endeavors, because, life is fucking short. You got to do what you love, because se te va así, bien rápido.
Yeah, this past year and a half kind of showed
Oh my God. I've become such a homebody. Like, no quiero salir de mi casa. My family laughs at me. Like, you get in the car and you start yawning. Like, I'm like a baby. But I'm just so comfortable with being home. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Maybe it's too much, but...
Yeah, I think sometimes I'm like that too. And recently, like, I kind of like learned that I need to go out more.
Branch out a little bit more. I'm trying. I went out to a party yesterday. I hadn't done that in a long time. So I'm trying.
That's good. Well, Marielle, thank you for Marielle. Thank you for sharing your stories, your creativity, your podcast. I want to invite everybody to listen to that show, Fuck Me Up.
Yes.
It's really
come
fun.
My way.
It's really fun. You make me laugh a lot because the way kind of like the way you talk to yourself sometimes. It's funny.
It's I think it's a border thing. Like not a lot of people get the way we talk and like our little chistes that we have or like our little everyone recognizes it as es de Calexico. And just a little anecdote before we end. This one time I was at a party in San Diego. There was people that spoke Spanish, so I was speaking Spanish, and this dude is staring at me and he's like, ¿Eres de Calexico? Like, specifically Calexico. Yeah. And I'm like, sí, güey, tú también eres de Calexico. Like, I got all excited. He's like, no, soy de Tijuana. Y yo, ¿y cómo sabes que soy de Calexico? Es que tengo un compa de ahí y hablan igual. And I'm like, shit. Yeah. And I'm like, shit, maybe I should tone it down a little. I'm a little rough around the edges.
And I think that's the something that I noticed about... especially us Mexicans, there's a huge variety of us, and we have our own language, like in every different region. I mean, it happens here too. Like, if you're from the South, if you're from New York, Boston, like you have this accent, right? But like when it comes to us, even though there might be like this little change, like in the tone, you can tell, that guy's from, El Norte, like Monterrey, like, or some.
El acento. Los chilangos.
Los pochos.
Los que dicen chido en lugar de chilo.
So, yeah, I think that's something that I've noticed about us as Mexicans, that, there's might be like a little variety, but you can tell like they're not from here or whatnot. And it's funny that even Calexico has his own.
It's, this little pueblito, it's out there in the world.
And that's funny because even like, I can assure you that, somebody from Calexico or somebody from El Centro can tell you that you're from Calexico because of the way you talk. And it's crazy. But yeah, once again, that we're at an hour and 5 minutes.
Es que estuvo buena la plática.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, sí, la verdad que sí. Thank you again for being here. And I'm gonna keep listening to her podcast.
Thank you. Take that step. Go watch the show.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna do it. Because, like you said, like it's the horror part is part of it, but it's more the
I think it's definitely dynamics. Secondary. I see it as a secondary, and it's just seeing this family with so much trauma deal with even more trauma.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, the ghost add to the trauma, right?
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I'll definitely check it out. But yeah, thank you again. Thank you guys for listening or watching. Make sure you stay safe, and we'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.
Bye-bye.